Every once in a while, a movie arrives that instantly sparks curiosity before audiences even know the full story behind it. The Rip, 2026, is one of those films. From its title alone, it suggests damage, separation, and something violently torn apart, not just in the physical sense, but emotionally and psychologically as well. This is a movie that promises intensity, unease, and a slow-burning sense of dread, the kind that creeps in quietly and stays long after the screen fades to black. The Rip positions itself as a modern cinematic experience designed for viewers who enjoy suspense layered with human drama. At its core, The Rip is built to feel unsettling rather than explosive. Instead of relying purely on loud moments or constant action, the film leans into atmosphere, tension, and the idea that something terrible is always just beneath the surface. The title works as a metaphor, hinting at fractures in relationships, morality, and even identity. This makes the film feel less like a traditional thriller and more like a character-driven descent into chaos, where every choice matters and every mistake carries weight. Released in 2026, The Rip enters a movie landscape where audiences are more selective than ever. Viewers now expect strong storytelling, believable characters, and themes that reflect real fears and struggles. This film appears to understand that shift. Instead of offering simple good versus evil storytelling, it aims to blur moral lines and force the audience to sit with uncomfortable questions. Who is really at fault when everything falls apart? Can damage ever truly be repaired once something has been ripped open? From the very beginning, The Rip establishes a serious and grounded tone. It does not rush to explain itself. Instead, it invites the audience in slowly, trusting viewers to piece together emotional clues as the story unfolds. This approach creates a sense of participation, making the audience feel like they are discovering the truth alongside the characters rather than being told what to think. That choice alone sets the movie apart from more formula-driven releases. The Rip also feels very much like a film made for discussion. It is the kind of movie people talk about after watching, debating character motivations, interpreting key scenes, and arguing about what certain moments truly mean. That quality is increasingly rare and valuable in modern cinema. Rather than providing easy answers, the movie appears to challenge its audience, encouraging multiple interpretations and emotional reactions. Another reason The Rip stands out is its apparent focus on realism. Even if the story itself leans into darker or more extreme territory, the emotions and reactions feel rooted in real human behavior. Fear, guilt, anger, and regret are not exaggerated for spectacle. They are portrayed as messy, complicated, and sometimes contradictory, just like in real life. This realism helps ground the film and makes its more intense moments hit harder. The Rip is not just about what happens on screen, but about what it makes the audience feel. There is a constant sense of pressure, as if something is slowly tightening around the characters. This creates a viewing experience that is immersive and emotionally demanding. It is not a movie designed for casual background watching. It asks for attention, patience, and emotional investment. As we move deeper into the film's world, it becomes clear that The Rip is less about a single event and more about the consequences that follow. It explores how one moment can fracture lives, relationships, and identities in ways that cannot easily be undone. That idea gives the film a lingering power, making it resonate beyond its runtime. Now that the tone, intent, and promise of The Rip, 2026, are clear, we can begin breaking the film down piece by piece, starting with the essential facts that shape its identity. The Rip, 2026, is a feature-length film released in the year 2026, positioned within the modern era of dark, character-driven cinema. The movie was developed during a time when audiences were increasingly drawn toward grounded storytelling, psychological tension, and morally complex narratives. Rather than aiming to be a large-scale spectacle, The Rip was structured as a focused cinematic experience, designed to place story, mood, and character psychology at the center of its identity. The film falls primarily into the thriller category, with strong elements of drama and psychological suspense woven throughout its runtime. It does not rely on a single genre label, instead blending tones to create a layered viewing experience. This hybrid approach allows the movie to shift between quiet, intimate moments and intense, high-stakes sequences without feeling disconnected. The genre balance reflects the film's central theme of instability, where emotional calm can quickly give way to chaos. The Rip has a standard feature runtime, long enough to fully develop its characters and narrative arcs without overstaying its welcome. The pacing is deliberate, favoring tension building over constant momentum. This structural choice supports the film's atmospheric nature and allows the audience time to absorb visual cues, dialogue subtext, and emotional shifts. Every scene is designed to serve the story rather than exist purely for spectacle. From a production standpoint, The Rip was conceived as a grounded and realistic film. Its creative team focused on authenticity in tone, behavior, and emotional response. Rather than exaggerated performances or stylized dialogue, the movie aims for naturalism. This approach helps anchor the story and makes the unfolding events feel believable, even when the narrative enters darker or more intense territory. The film was produced in English and targeted primarily toward a mature audience. Its themes, emotional weight, and subject matter are not designed for younger viewers. Instead, the movie speaks to adults who appreciate layered storytelling and are willing to engage with morally challenging material. The rating reflects this intention, accounting for strong language, intense situations, and psychologically heavy content. The Rip was distributed as a theatrical release, with additional availability planned through digital platforms following its initial run. Its release strategy aligned with modern viewing habits, acknowledging both traditional cinema audiences and viewers who prefer at-home experiences. This dual approach allowed the film to reach a broader audience without sacrificing its cinematic identity. In terms of creative leadership, The Rip was guided by a unified vision. The director, writers, and producers worked toward a consistent tone and message, ensuring that all elements of the film served the same emotional and thematic goals. This cohesion is noticeable in how the story unfolds and how visual and sound elements complement the narrative rather than distract from it. The movie's title, The Rip, was intentionally chosen for its simplicity and symbolic weight. It reflects both physical and emotional rupture, suggesting separation, damage, and irreversible change. This title functions as a thematic anchor, informing the audience that the story will explore moments where something breaks and cannot easily be restored. The simplicity of the name also adds to its memorability and intrigue. The Rip was marketed as a serious, thought-provoking film rather than a mainstream crowd-pleaser. Promotional materials emphasized mood, tension, and character conflict instead of action-heavy sequences. This positioning helped set audience expectations and attracted viewers looking for substance over spectacle. Critically, the film was framed as a conversation starter. Even before release, discussions around The Rip focused on its themes, tone, and narrative approach rather than just its plot. This suggests that the movie was intended to be analyzed and debated, not simply consumed and forgotten. Overall, The Rip, 2026, stands as a carefully constructed piece of modern cinema. Its basic information reveals a film that values storytelling depth, emotional realism, and thematic complexity. These foundational choices shape everything that follows, from plot development to character arcs and visual style. With the essential facts now established, the next step is to dive deeper into the heart of the movie itself and explore what story The Rip is truly telling. The story begins with shock rippling through the Miami-Dade Police Department when Captain Jackie Velez is brutally murdered. Velez was respected, feared, and known for running a tight ship, especially with her elite tactical narcotics team, known internally as TNT. Almost immediately, whispers spread through the department and the streets. Rumors suggest that members of TNT may have crossed a dangerous line, robbing drug houses and skimming cartel money. With Velez dead, suspicion quietly but steadily turns inward, poisoning trust among officers who once relied on each other with their lives. Lieutenant Dane Dumars, Velez's second-in-command, finds himself at the center of the storm. Stoic, disciplined, and intensely private, Dumars receives an anonymous tip pointing to a house in Hialeah connected to cartel cash. He assembles his team, veteran detective J.D. Byrne, unpredictable but sharp Mike Rowe, loyal Numa Baptiste, and hot-headed Lolo Salazar. Before they move out, Dumars tells each man a different detail about the alleged stash, specifically how much money they should expect to find. No one notices the significance of this lie yet, but it quietly plants seeds of doubt. The house belongs to the family of a recently deceased woman, and the only person present is her granddaughter, Desi Molina. She is wary, guarded, and clearly uncomfortable when the armed detectives arrive. After some hesitation, Desi allows them inside. The house feels wrong from the moment they enter, too quiet, too watched. As they search, tension builds until they uncover the truth: $20 million in cartel cash, hidden carefully in the attic. The sheer size of the find instantly changes everything. Standard protocol demands immediate notification of higher command and federal authorities. Dumars refuses. He makes a decision that stuns the team. He orders everyone's phones confiscated, claiming operational security, though Rose secretly keeps a burner phone hidden. Dumars insists they count the money on site, following procedure for seizures, but the mood shifts from professional to paranoid. Every officer understands the danger of being alone with that much cartel money, unreported, unprotected. Local Hialeah officers arrive outside, their presence tense and strangely unhelpful. Dumars orders the team to arm themselves as they continue counting. The house becomes a fortress, but fear seeps in through every crack. Desi finally speaks up, revealing that her grandmother instructed her to offer a cut of the money if police ever discovered it. That confession raises alarms, especially when Desi admits she was once a police informant. Dumars becomes visibly suspicious, unsure if she is a pawn or something far more dangerous. The pressure escalates when mysterious phone calls begin coming into the house, warning the team to leave immediately. Byrne confronts Dumars, accusing him of lying about the tip that led them here. Dumars refuses to reveal his source. Byrne's trust cracks. He begins to believe that Dumars orchestrated this entire operation to steal the money. Acting on instinct, Byrne secretly contacts DA agent Maddie Nix, who drops a devastating possibility: Dumars may have been involved in Captain Velez's murder. As the neighborhood remains eerily empty, Byrne realizes something is wrong. He steps outside alone to investigate a nearby house, discovering it is occupied by cartel lookouts. Meanwhile, inside, Desi overhears Dumars speaking privately with Baptiste and Salazar, convincing them to help him take the money. She quietly warns Ro, confirming Ro's growing fear that Dumars is planning a full betrayal. Suddenly, the power is cut. Darkness swallows the house. Gunfire erupts from outside, tearing through walls and windows. Chaos explodes. Salazar is hit and badly wounded. Dumars and Ro fight back, chasing off the attackers, though it is unclear whether they have truly driven them away. The house feels like a trap closing in. Byrne returns with one of the cartel lookouts, who makes a shocking declaration. He claims the cartel did not order the attack and is willing to abandon the money entirely. But he delivers a final warning. Captain Velez was likely killed by someone on her own team. That accusation ignites everything. Byrne turns on Dumars, convinced he is guilty. During the struggle, Ro loses his burner phone. Flames break out in the house just as Agent Nix arrives on the scene. With the building burning and Salazar bleeding, decisions are made fast. Baptiste and Salazar stay behind with Desi while Dumars, Byrne, Ro, and Nix load the money into an armored vehicle. The night feels like it is spiraling out of control, but the truth is only beginning to surface. Inside the moving vehicle, Dumars finally reveals his version of events. Captain Velez herself sent him the tip before she was killed. The house was meant to be bait to expose a crooked heist crew within law enforcement. Dumars deliberately made everyone believe he intended to steal the money, forcing the real criminals to act. When the mysterious callers mentioned the specific amount Dumars told only Ro, he realized Ro was involved. The conspiracy runs deeper than anyone imagined, involving Nix and the local Hialeah officers. As Dumars finishes explaining, trust collapses, guns are raised, and the ride toward daylight becomes a march toward bloodshed. The tension inside the armored vehicle becomes unbearable as Dumars' revelation sinks in. Byrne struggles to process the idea that everything unfolding tonight was part of Captain Velez's final plan. According to Dumars, Velez knew there was a corrupt crew operating within law enforcement, stealing cartel money and eliminating anyone who threatened to expose them. She chose the Hialeah house as bait, believing the stolen cash would draw the conspirators out into the open. Her death was not part of the plan, but the risk was always there. Dumars accepted that risk, knowing it might cost lives. As Dumars speaks, Agent Matty Nix listens in silence, his face unreadable. Roe grows increasingly agitated. The air inside the vehicle feels thick with betrayal. Dumars explains how he tested the team by telling each officer a different amount of money expected at the house. When the threatening phone calls referenced the exact number Dumars had told Roe, the truth became clear. Roe was feeding information to the heist crew. Byrne finally understands that Dumars' secrecy was not greed, but strategy. Roe suddenly reaches for a weapon, and the fragile calm shatters. Nix opens fire, revealing himself fully. The armored vehicle swerves violently as the driver is hit and killed in the chaos. Gunshots echo inside the confined space. Dumars and Byrne return fire while trying to avoid killing each other. Roe is wounded but manages to escape the vehicle during the crash, disappearing into the streets with Nix close behind him. The scene fractures into multiple pursuits. Dumars staggers out of the wreckage, bleeding but determined. Byrne gives chase to Nix, who hijacks a nearby vehicle. Sirens begin to wail in the distance as law enforcement converges on the area. The city itself seems to awaken, lights flashing and helicopters circling overhead. The night that began in secrecy is now exploding into public exposure. During the chase, Nix finally admits the truth. He and Roe ambushed Captain Velez after realizing she was closing in on their operation. Velez fought back, but she was outnumbered. Nix believed killing her would end the threat, never suspecting she had already set events in motion. As Nix boasts, Byrne reveals one final move. He secretly contacted his brother Del, an FBI agent, earlier in the night. Federal units are already closing in. The pursuit ends violently. Nix attempts to ram Byrne off the road, but Byrne fires first, killing Nix and ending the chase in a brutal crash. At the same time, Dumars tracks Roe through back alleys and abandoned streets. Their confrontation is raw and personal. Roe, desperate and bleeding, tries to justify his actions, claiming the system was broken and the money was already dirty. Dumars rejects the excuse. He arrests Roe himself, refusing to let him die and escape accountability. As dawn approaches, the full scope of the conspiracy becomes clear. The crooked officers are arrested. The Hialeah police involved are exposed. Federal authorities secure the scene and recover the money bags from the armored vehicle. But when the bags are opened, they are filled with phone books instead of cash. Confusion spreads until Dumars explains the final layer of the plan. Desi Molina's grandmother, far from being a helpless bystander, anticipated betrayal long ago. She had replaced the cartel money with phone books and hidden the real cash elsewhere. Desi followed her grandmother's instructions perfectly, protecting the money until the right moment. With the corrupt officers exposed, the real $20 million is turned over safely to the authorities. The plan succeeds, not through brute force, but through patience and foresight. Desi is rewarded for her cooperation. She receives 20% of the seizure, a life-changing sum that offers her freedom from the shadow of cartel violence and police corruption. More importantly, she regains control over her own future, no longer defined by fear or manipulation. For Dumars and Byrne, the victory is bittersweet. Captain Velez is avenged, but her absence is deeply felt. The department begins the slow process of rebuilding trust, knowing that betrayal came from within. Dumars clears his name, though the cost weighs heavily on him. Byrne gains a new understanding of loyalty, realizing that truth sometimes requires uncomfortable methods. The film closes quietly, far from gunfire and sirens. On a Miami beach, Dumars and Byrne watch the sun rise over the ocean. The night is finally over. The waves roll in steadily, indifferent to human corruption and loss. They speak of Velez, remembering her strength, her intelligence, and her willingness to sacrifice everything to expose the truth. The sunrise becomes a symbol of renewal. Justice, though delayed and painful, has been served. The system is wounded but not broken. Dumars and Burns stand together, changed men, carrying the weight of the night with them. As the light spreads across the water, the story ends not with celebration, but with reflection, honoring a fallen captain whose final act ensured that the rot within her department was finally ripped out at the core. The plot structure of The Rip, 2026, is carefully designed to function like a pressure cooker, slowly tightening until it explodes. The film follows a mostly linear narrative, but it constantly reshapes the audience's understanding of events by withholding key information and then revealing it at critical moments. This creates a sense of unease and unpredictability, making viewers question motivations, alliances, and even what version of the truth they are being shown at any given time. The story begins with an inciting incident that immediately destabilizes the world of the film, the murder of Captain Jackie Velez. This opening event is not just a plot trigger but a thematic anchor. It establishes loss, suspicion, and moral decay as central forces. Instead of showing the murder in detail, the narrative allows its impact to ripple outward, influencing every character's behavior. This choice keeps the focus on consequences rather than spectacle and pulls the audience into an investigative mindset from the very start. The first act focuses on setup and tension building. Lieutenant Dane Dumars receives the tip about the Hialeah house, assembles the tactical narcotics team, and subtly begins testing them by giving each member different information. At this stage, the narrative appears straightforward, following the familiar structure of a police operation. However, small irregularities, such as Dumars' guarded behavior and Desi Molina's discomfort, signal that the story will not follow a simple procedural path. These early moments plant narrative questions that remain unanswered for much of the film. The second act forms the emotional and structural core of the movie. Once the team discovers the $20 million, the plot shifts from investigation to survival. The refusal to call in the seizure breaks the expected flow of a police thriller and traps the characters in a moral gray zone. The house becomes a contained environment, almost a stage, where paranoia grows and trust dissolves. The narrative rhythm slows here, allowing conversations, confrontations, and silent glances to carry as much weight as gunfire. Each phone call, accusation, and revelation pushes the story forward while tightening the net around the characters. Midway through the film, the narrative fractures intentionally. Conflicting perspectives emerge, particularly between Dumars and Byrne. Byrne's decision to contact Agent Nix creates a parallel line of tension, one the audience initially believes is a step toward justice. This is a crucial narrative misdirection. The film encourages viewers to side with Byrne's suspicion, only to later reveal that this path leads deeper into corruption. This reversal is central to the film's storytelling power. The escalation into violence marks the transition into the third act. The power outage, gunfire, and Salazar's injury serve as the point of no return. From here, the narrative accelerates rapidly. Information that was previously hidden begins to surface, but never all at once. Instead, the film delivers revelations in bursts, each one recontextualizing earlier scenes. Dumars' explanation of Velez's plan reframes his secrecy, while exposing Rowe and Nix shifts the audience's understanding of loyalty and betrayal. The armored vehicle sequence acts as both a physical and narrative crossroads. Characters are confined together as truths collide, forcing confrontations that can no longer be avoided. The story abandons any remaining sense of procedural order and becomes purely reactive, driven by survival and accountability. The subsequent chases split the narrative into multiple threads, but they remain thematically unified, all leading toward exposure and consequence. The resolution slows the pace again, allowing the story to breathe. The reveal of the swapped money provides narrative closure while reinforcing the film's theme of foresight over force. The final beach scene serves as an emotional epilogue rather than a plot-driven conclusion. Instead of tying everything up neatly, it allows reflection to replace action. Overall, The Rip uses a controlled, escalating plot structure that prioritizes tension, misdirection, and delayed revelation. Its narrative flow mirrors the characters' internal states, beginning with order, descending into chaos, and emerging into a quiet, uneasy calm. Character development in The Rip, 2026, is one of the film's strongest elements, as every major character undergoes a clear transformation shaped by pressure, fear, and moral conflict. Rather than relying on exaggerated personalities, the film presents grounded individuals whose true nature is revealed through difficult choices. Each arc is built gradually, allowing the audience to understand not just what the characters do, but why they do it. Lieutenant Dane Dumars begins the film as a controlled and distant authority figure. At first, he appears secretive and possibly corrupt, deliberately withholding information and refusing to follow protocol. This initial perception is intentional. Dumars' arc is structured around misunderstanding. The audience is encouraged to doubt him, just as his team does. However, as the story unfolds, it becomes clear that his cold demeanor is a shield. Dumars is carrying the weight of Captain Valessa's trust and her final plan. By the end of the film, he emerges not as a rogue officer, but as a strategist willing to sacrifice his reputation to expose deeper corruption. His arc resolves with quiet integrity rather than public praise. J.D. Byrne experiences the most visible internal struggle. He starts as a loyal detective who believes in rules, transparency, and institutional justice. When Dumars begins acting suspiciously, Byrne's faith in his superior erodes. His arc is driven by doubt and moral anxiety. Byrne's decision to contact Agent Nix feels logical at the time, reflecting his need for clarity and accountability. The tragedy of his arc is that his attempt to do the right thing nearly empowers the wrong people. By the end, Byrne learns that morality is not always clean or procedural. His growth comes from recognizing that truth sometimes hides behind uncomfortable methods, and that trust must be earned, not assumed. Mike Rowe's arc is a descent rather than a transformation. From the beginning, Rowe is portrayed as edgy and unpredictable, but not openly villainous. Small details, such as his hidden burner phone and his quickness to challenge authority, hint at deeper flaws. As pressure mounts, Rowe's selfishness and rationalization surface. He convinces himself that the money is already tainted and that stealing it is a victimless act. His arc culminates in full exposure, where his justifications collapse under the reality of murder and betrayal. Rowe ends the film stripped of excuses, arrested by the very team he betrayed. Numa Baptiste and Lolo Salazar function as mirrors of loyalty under stress. Baptiste is steady and reserved, initially willing to follow Dumars out of trust rather than ambition. His arc is subtle, showing how loyalty can blur into complicity if not questioned. Salazar, more impulsive and emotional, is drawn into Dumars' supposed plan out of fear and frustration rather than greed. His injury becomes a turning point, forcing him to confront the cost of blind allegiance. Both characters survive, but their arcs end with disillusionment, aware that good intentions do not protect against consequences. Desi Molina's arc is one of quiet empowerment. At first, she appears passive, caught between fear of the cartel and distrust of the police. As the story progresses, her intelligence and awareness become clear. Desi understands more than she initially reveals, guided by her grandmother's long-term planning. Her cooperation is cautious but intentional. By the end, Desi transitions from a reluctant participant to a survivor who reclaims agency over her life. Her reward is not just financial, but emotional freedom from forces that once controlled her. Captain Jackie Valesse, though absent for most of the film, has a powerful posthumous arc. Through revelations and dialogue, she transforms from a murder victim into the architect of the story's events. Her foresight and willingness to use herself as bait redefine her role. Valesse represents institutional integrity at great personal cost, and her legacy drives the moral resolution of the film. Together, these arcs create a layered exploration of trust, loyalty, and corruption. Each character changes not because the plot demands it, but because pressure forces truth to the surface. The performances in The Rip, 2026, play a critical role in grounding the film's tension and emotional weight. Because the story relies heavily on mistrust, shifting alliances, and unspoken motives, the actors carry much of the narrative through subtle expression rather than overt dialogue. The acting style across the film is restrained and realistic, allowing the drama to feel authentic instead of theatrical. The actor portraying Lieutenant Dane Dumars delivers a performance built on control and internal conflict. For much of the film, Dumars is deliberately unreadable. His body language is stiff, his tone measured, and his facial expressions minimal. This creates discomfort, both for the characters around him and for the audience. The brilliance of the performance lies in how that restraint slowly gains meaning. When Dumars finally explains his actions, the earlier coldness retroactively becomes emotional armor rather than arrogance. The actor communicates exhaustion, guilt, and resolve without dramatic outbursts, making Dumars feel like a man carrying an unbearable burden alone. J.D. Byrne's performance serves as the emotional entry point for the audience. The actor brings a sense of nervous intelligence to the role, portraying Byrne as thoughtful but deeply conflicted. His reactions feel instinctive rather than scripted, especially during moments of confrontation. The growing suspicion toward Dumars is expressed through subtle changes in posture, eye contact, and pacing. When Byrne realizes he may have trusted the wrong person, the actor captures regret without self-pity. This performance succeeds because it reflects how real people process moral doubt in real time. Mike Rowe's portrayal leans into volatility without becoming cartoonish. The actor balances charm and aggression, making Rowe believable as someone who could hide betrayal behind humor and confidence. His nervous energy increases as the film progresses, visible in restless movement and defensive speech patterns. When Rowe is exposed, the performance shifts from arrogance to desperation. Instead of playing Rowe as a one-dimensional villain, the actor allows moments of fear and justification to surface, making his downfall feel tragic rather than simplistic. Numa Baptiste is portrayed with quiet strength. The actor uses stillness effectively, often saying more through silence than dialogue. Baptiste's loyalty feels genuine, but his hesitation during key moments suggests internal doubt. This layered approach prevents the character from fading into the background. Even when Baptiste is not speaking, the actor's presence reinforces the tension of every decision being made around him. Lolo Salazar's performance is driven by emotional intensity. The actor brings impatience and frustration to the role, reflecting a man worn down by bureaucracy and pressure. Salazar's impulsive nature is believable because it is rooted in emotional fatigue rather than recklessness. His injury scene is particularly effective, as the actor communicates fear and regret without melodrama, reinforcing the consequences of rash decisions. Desi Molina's portrayal adds emotional texture to the film. The actor avoids portraying Desi as either helpless or overly defiant. Instead, she presents a cautious intelligence shaped by trauma. Her guarded expressions and measured speech suggest someone constantly calculating risk. As Desi's confidence grows, the performance subtly shifts, allowing strength to emerge without abandoning vulnerability. This makes her arc feel earned and realistic. Captain Jackie Velez, though largely absent, leaves a strong impression through brief appearances and dialogue references. The actor playing Velez establishes authority and moral clarity quickly, making her loss resonate. Even without extensive screen time, the performance gives weight to her influence over the entire narrative. Overall, the acting in The Rip succeeds because it prioritizes realism and restraint. No performance overshadows the story. Instead, each actor contributes to a cohesive emotional landscape where tension feels lived in and betrayal feels personal. The result is a film where performances do not demand attention but quietly command it. The direction of The Rip, 2026, reflects a clear and disciplined vision focused on tension, realism, and emotional restraint. Rather than pushing the film toward spectacle, the director commits to a grounded approach that allows the story to unfold naturally through character behavior and escalating pressure. This choice shapes every aspect of the film, from pacing to performance, and ensures that the narrative remains intimate even when the stakes become extreme. One of the most defining elements of the director's vision is control. Scenes are rarely rushed, and the camera is often allowed to linger, creating space for discomfort to settle in. This patience builds suspense more effectively than constant action. The director trusts the audience to read between the lines, using silence and stillness as storytelling tools. This restraint reinforces the film's central theme that danger often hides in quiet moments rather than loud ones. The director also demonstrates a strong understanding of spatial storytelling. The Hialeah house is treated almost like a character itself. Through careful blocking and camera placement, the director emphasizes confinement and vulnerability. Hallways feel narrow, ceilings feel low, and rooms feel watched. As the story progresses, the same spaces become increasingly hostile, reflecting the breakdown of trust among the characters. This consistent visual language strengthens the emotional impact without relying on exposition. Another key aspect of the director's vision is moral ambiguity. The film is not interested in presenting clear heroes and villains from the beginning. Instead, the director intentionally obscures motivations, encouraging the audience to question everyone's intentions. This is achieved through selective framing and withheld information. Characters are often shown reacting before the audience understands why, creating doubt and tension. When truths are finally revealed, they feel earned rather than convenient. The director's handling of violence is particularly notable. Action sequences are short, chaotic, and unsettling rather than stylized. Gunfire is loud and disorienting, and injuries carry visible consequences. By avoiding glorification, the director reinforces the seriousness of each violent act. This approach keeps the focus on survival and consequence rather than excitement, aligning with the film's realistic tone. The director also maintains thematic consistency throughout the film. The idea of rupture, suggested by the title, is reflected in visual and narrative choices. Relationships fracture, plans unravel, and authority collapses under pressure. Even when the plot twists and revelations occur, they feel connected to this central idea. The director ensures that every major turn in the story serves the same emotional purpose rather than existing purely to surprise. Collaboration with actors appears to be a priority in the director's approach. Performances are naturalistic, suggesting an environment where actors were encouraged to explore subtle emotional shifts rather than exaggerated reactions. The director allows moments of vulnerability to play out without interruption, resisting the urge to cut away too quickly. This creates authenticity and allows performances to breathe. The final act reflects the director's confidence in quiet resolution. Instead of ending on explosive triumph, the film concludes with reflection. The beach sunrise scene is simple, almost minimal, but deeply intentional. It provides emotional closure without undermining the gravity of what came before. This choice reflects a director more interested in emotional truth than conventional payoff. Overall, the director's vision for The Rip is one of discipline and purpose. Every stylistic decision supports the story's core themes of trust, betrayal, and consequence. The result is a film that feels cohesive and intentional, guided by a steady hand that values subtlety over excess. The cinematography of The Rip, 2026, plays a crucial role in shaping the film's tense and grounded atmosphere. Rather than aiming for flashy visuals, the visual style is intentionally restrained, emphasizing realism and emotional unease. Every frame is designed to support the story's themes of suspicion, confinement, and moral fracture, making the camera an active participant in the narrative rather than a passive observer. One of the defining traits of the cinematography is its use of controlled lighting. Much of the film takes place at night or in dimly lit interiors, especially within the Hialeah house. Shadows dominate the frame, creating visual uncertainty that mirrors the characters' psychological states. Faces are often partially obscured, reinforcing the idea that no one is fully transparent. This lighting approach avoids stylization for its own sake and instead grounds the tension in a believable environment. The camera movement is deliberate and measured. During moments of investigation or quiet confrontation, the camera often remains steady or moves slowly, allowing the audience to absorb details and body language. This stillness builds discomfort, as viewers are given time to sense what is unsaid. In contrast, during moments of violence or chaos, the camera becomes more unstable, using handheld movement to convey disorientation and fear. The shift in camera behavior reflects the loss of control experienced by the characters. Framing is used strategically to emphasize isolation and mistrust. Characters are frequently positioned at opposite ends of the frame or separated by physical barriers such as door frames, staircases, or walls. Even when multiple characters share a scene, the composition often keeps them visually divided. This reinforces the emotional distance growing between members of the tactical narcotics team. Group shots become rarer as the story progresses, replaced by tighter, more claustrophobic compositions. The Hialeah house itself is filmed in a way that enhances its oppressive nature. Wide shots establish its ordinary exterior, making the danger inside feel more unsettling. Once inside, the cinematography shifts to tighter angles and limited depth of field. Rooms feel smaller than they actually are, and ceilings seem to press down on the characters. As the situation deteriorates, the house becomes visually darker and more chaotic, reflecting the collapse of order. Color grading is subtle but effective. The film favors muted tones, with grays, blues, and washed-out earth colors dominating the palette. This subdued color scheme reinforces the film's serious tone and avoids visual distraction. Warm colors are rare and usually appear only in moments of false comfort or reflection, such as the final beach scene. This contrast makes the ending feel emotionally distinct without feeling disconnected. The use of perspective is another key element of the visual style. The camera often adopts a watchful position, lingering in hallways or corners as if observing the characters. This creates a sense that the team is never truly alone, even before the cartel's presence is confirmed. At times, the audience feels like an unseen witness, complicit in the unfolding tension. This perspective enhances the film's atmosphere of paranoia. Exterior scenes are shot with an emphasis on emptiness and exposure. The abandoned streets and quiet neighborhood amplify the feeling that the team has stepped into a controlled zone. Long lenses compress space, making distances appear shorter and threats feel closer. This visual compression increases anxiety and reinforces the idea that escape is limited. The final beach scene stands out visually by design. The cinematography opens up, using wider shots and natural light to create a sense of release. The steady horizon and gentle movement of the waves contrast sharply with the confined darkness that dominated earlier scenes. This visual shift signals emotional resolution without undermining the gravity of the story. Overall, the cinematography of The Rip is purposeful and disciplined. It avoids unnecessary flourishes and instead uses light, movement, and framing to deepen tension and support character-driven storytelling. The visual style does not demand attention, but it quietly shapes the audience's emotional experience from beginning to end. The editing and pacing of The Rip, 2026, are carefully calibrated to maintain tension while allowing character dynamics to unfold naturally. Rather than relying on rapid cuts or constant momentum, the film adopts a measured rhythm that reflects the slow buildup of suspicion and the sudden eruption of violence. This balance between restraint and urgency is central to the film's effectiveness. In the early stages, the editing is deliberately unobtrusive. Scenes are allowed to play out with longer takes, giving the audience time to observe behavior, tone, and subtle shifts in power. Conversations are not overcut, and reaction shots are used sparingly. This creates a sense of realism and immersion, as if the viewer is present in the room rather than being guided by aggressive editorial choices. The pacing during this phase reinforces the feeling that everything is under control, even as small cracks begin to appear. As the team enters the Hialeah house and discovers the money, the editing subtly tightens. Cuts become slightly more frequent, but still controlled. The editor emphasizes eye contact, hesitations, and physical positioning, allowing tension to grow without overt signals. This slow escalation mirrors the characters' internal states, as doubt and fear begin to replace confidence. The pacing here is crucial, as it prevents the discovery from feeling like a turning point too early, instead treating it as the beginning of a longer descent. The midpoint of the film marks a noticeable shift. Once phones are confiscated and outside threats emerge, the editing becomes more reactive. Cross-cutting is introduced to follow multiple lines of action, such as Burns' investigation outside and the team's escalating paranoia inside the house. This technique increases narrative momentum while maintaining clarity. The audience is given just enough information to stay engaged without fully understanding the bigger picture, preserving suspense. During moments of violence, the editing avoids excess. Action sequences are cut tightly but not frenetically. Shots are allowed to linger just long enough to register impact, injury, and consequence. This approach keeps violence grounded and uncomfortable rather than thrilling. The editor resists the temptation to stylize chaos, instead presenting it as abrupt and disorienting, consistent with the film's realistic tone. The armored vehicle sequence represents the film's most complex editing challenge, and it is handled with precision. Confined space, multiple characters, and overlapping revelations require careful rhythm. The editor balances dialogue and action, ensuring that critical information is delivered without slowing the momentum. Cuts are motivated by shifts in power and emotion rather than purely by movement, maintaining narrative coherence even as the situation collapses. Pacing accelerates significantly during the chase sequences that follow. The editing becomes sharper, with quicker cuts and more dynamic transitions. However, the film never loses its sense of control. Each chase serves a narrative purpose, pushing characters toward accountability rather than existing as spectacle. The editor ensures that spatial relationships remain clear, preventing confusion while maintaining urgency. After the climactic confrontations, the film intentionally decelerates. The editing allows scenes to breathe again, mirroring the emotional aftermath of the chaos. This slowdown is essential, as it gives weight to the consequences and prevents the ending from feeling rushed or hollow. The reveal of the swapped money is handled calmly, reinforcing the theme of foresight and patience. The final scene on the beach is edited with simplicity. Longer shots and minimal cutting allow the emotional resonance to settle. The absence of rapid transitions underscores the return to stillness after turmoil. This editorial choice reinforces the idea that resolution does not require constant motion. Overall, the editing and pacing of The Rip demonstrate discipline and narrative awareness. By adapting rhythm to emotional stakes, the film maintains tension without sacrificing clarity or realism. Every cut serves character and theme, making the pacing feel intentional rather than mechanical. Sound design, music, and score in The Rip, 2026, are used with precision and restraint, reinforcing the film's tension-driven storytelling rather than overpowering it. Instead of relying on constant musical cues, the film treats sound as an emotional undercurrent, allowing silence, ambient noise, and subtle musical motifs to shape the audience's experience. This approach deepens realism and keeps the focus on character psychology. One of the most effective elements of the sound design is its use of silence. Many key scenes unfold with minimal or no music, forcing the audience to engage with natural sounds such as breathing, footsteps, fabric movement, and distant traffic. These quiet details amplify discomfort, especially inside the Hialeah house, where every sound feels heightened. Silence becomes a narrative tool, signaling moments of tension and uncertainty without announcing them overtly. Ambient sound plays a crucial role in establishing setting and mood. The neighborhood is defined by emptiness rather than noise, with long stretches of near silence broken by distant sirens, barking dogs, or passing cars. This sparse soundscape reinforces the feeling that the team is isolated and being watched. Inside the house, creaking wood, shifting floorboards, and the hum of electrical systems create a sense of vulnerability. When the power is cut, the sudden absence of ambient noise feels jarring, emphasizing the loss of control. The sound design during action sequences avoids exaggeration. Gunshots are loud, sharp, and unsettling rather than stylized. Echoes ring longer than expected, disorienting both characters and viewers. The impact of bullets hitting walls and bodies is emphasized through realistic audio, making violence feel dangerous and irreversible. There is no glorification, only consequence. Dialogue is mixed clearly but naturally. Voices do not dominate the soundscape. Instead, they coexist with environmental noise. Characters sometimes speak over one another or lower their voices, reflecting real conversational dynamics under stress. This choice enhances authenticity and requires the audience to listen closely, increasing engagement. The musical score is used sparingly, entering the film only when emotional guidance is necessary. Rather than continuous themes, the score relies on minimal motifs, often built from low-frequency tones and subtle rhythmic pulses. These elements sit beneath the dialogue, almost felt more than heard. The score often signals unease rather than danger, preparing the audience emotionally without revealing narrative direction. During moments of revelation, the music does not swell dramatically. Instead, it recedes or remains subdued, allowing the weight of information to land on its own. This restraint respects the intelligence of the audience and aligns with the film's realistic tone. Emotional reactions are earned through performance and context rather than musical manipulation. The armored vehicle sequence demonstrates effective integration of sound and music. The confined space amplifies gunfire and shouting, creating a claustrophobic audio environment. The score briefly intensifies, but never overwhelms the chaos. Engine noise, screeching tires, and metallic impacts dominate, grounding the scene in physical reality. The chase sequences rely heavily on environmental sound. Sirens, helicopters, and city noise blend together, creating a sense of public exposure after prolonged secrecy. The transition from quiet neighborhoods to loud urban spaces is reinforced sonically, marking a shift in the story's scale and stakes. The final beach scene offers a contrast in sound design. Natural elements take center stage, waves rolling in, wind moving across the shore, distant seabirds. Music is minimal or absent, allowing the environment to provide emotional closure. This return to natural sound reinforces the theme of calm after chaos and gives the ending a reflective quality. Overall, the sound design, music, and score of The Rip are integral to its storytelling. By prioritizing realism, restraint, and emotional subtlety, the film uses sound not to dictate feelings, but to deepen immersion. Every auditory choice supports the narrative, making tension feel lived in and resolution feel earned. The production design of The Rip, 2026, plays a vital role in grounding the story in realism while reinforcing its themes of confinement, corruption, and exposure. Rather than creating visually striking or stylized environments, the film chooses authenticity and familiarity, making each location feel lived in and believable. This commitment to realism allows the audience to focus on character behavior and tension without distraction. The central location, the Hialeah House, is designed to appear ordinary at first glance. Its exterior blends into the neighborhood, reflecting how danger can hide behind everyday appearances. The interior is modest and slightly worn, suggesting a long history without overt signs of wealth. This contrast between the house's unremarkable appearance and the massive amount of money hidden inside underscores the film's central idea that corruption often exists beneath the surface. Inside the house, production design emphasizes tight spaces and limited visibility. Hallways are narrow, rooms feel cluttered, and ceilings appear low. Furniture placement restricts movement, forcing characters into close proximity and heightening tension. The attic, where the money is hidden, is especially important. Its cramped layout and dusty atmosphere make the discovery of the cache feel invasive and dangerous rather than triumphant. Props are used with intention throughout the film. The money itself is not presented as glamorous. It is packed tightly, heavy, and unwieldy, reinforcing the burden it represents. Weapons, radios, and police gear look worn and functional, not polished or stylized. This reinforces the professionalism of the team while reminding the audience that these are working officers, not action heroes. Lighting fixtures within the house contribute to the oppressive mood. Lamps cast uneven light, creating shadows that shift as characters move. When the power is cut, the transition feels natural because the environment was already dim and unstable. Flashlights and emergency lighting become narrative tools, shaping how scenes unfold and what information is revealed or hidden. The surrounding neighborhood is designed to feel empty and controlled. Streets are quiet, houses appear unoccupied, and public spaces lack activity. This absence of normal life heightens the sense that the team has entered hostile territory. The production design avoids exaggeration, relying instead on subtle cues like closed blinds and parked cars to suggest unseen surveillance. Police vehicles and the armored transport are presented as utilitarian rather than imposing. The armored vehicle, in particular, becomes a mobile set that intensifies conflict. Its cramped interior and metallic surfaces amplify sound and restrict movement, turning it into a pressure chamber where secrets are forced into the open. Secondary locations, such as streets, alleys, and industrial areas used during chase sequences, are selected for their realism and texture. These environments feel familiar and unromantic, reinforcing the film's grounded tone. The absence of iconic landmarks keeps the focus on the characters rather than the city itself. The final beach location stands in deliberate contrast to earlier settings. Open space, natural light, and minimal set dressing create a sense of release. The simplicity of the environment allows emotion to take center stage. This location is not designed to impress visually, but to provide emotional clarity after prolonged confinement. Costume design complements the production environments. Police uniforms and casual clothing are consistent with real-world usage, showing wear and personalization. Desi's clothing reflects practicality and caution, evolving subtly as her confidence grows. There are no dramatic wardrobe shifts, reinforcing the film's realistic approach. Overall, the production design, sets, and locations in The Rip serve the story rather than overshadow it. Each environment reinforces the emotional stakes, creating a cohesive world where tension feels organic and consequences feel real. The film's visual authenticity strengthens its impact, making the unfolding events feel disturbingly plausible. Visual effects and practical effects in The Rip, 2026, are used with careful restraint, prioritizing realism and immersion over spectacle. The film avoids flashy or exaggerated effects, instead integrating visual elements in a way that supports the story without drawing attention to the technique itself. This approach aligns with the film's grounded tone and reinforces the sense that events are unfolding in a real, tangible world. Practical effects dominate the film's action and physical interactions. Gunshot impacts, broken glass, fire damage, and injuries are executed in a believable manner. Blood effects are minimal but effective, emphasizing consequence rather than shock. Wounds look painful and limiting, affecting how characters move and fight. This reinforces the idea that violence has lasting effects and cannot be brushed aside. The firefight at the Hialeah house relies heavily on practical staging. Bullet holes appear gradually across walls and furniture, showing the progression of the attack. Windows shatter realistically, and debris falls unevenly, creating unpredictable hazards. These details help maintain tension by making the environment feel unstable and dangerous. Fire spreads naturally, consuming the house in stages rather than erupting suddenly. The flames feel threatening without overwhelming the scene. Visual effects are used subtly to enhance practical elements rather than replace them. Muzzle flashes, sparks, and small environmental enhancements are digitally refined to maintain continuity and safety. These effects are blended seamlessly, ensuring they do not distract from performances or narrative focus. The audience is never pulled out of the story by noticeable digital manipulation. The power outage sequence demonstrates effective use of combined effects. Lights flicker realistically before going dark, followed by emergency lighting and flashlights. Smoke and dust hang in the air, catching light in unpredictable ways. These elements create visual confusion that mirrors the character's emotional state. The effects serve atmosphere first, action second. The armored vehicle crash is another example of controlled effects work. The impact feels heavy and chaotic without resorting to exaggerated destruction. Metal bends, glass cracks, and bodies react with appropriate force. The scene emphasizes disorientation rather than visual spectacle. Sound and camera movement work alongside effects to sell the realism of the crash. Chase sequences rely more on practical driving and location work than digital enhancement. Vehicles move through real streets and environments, grounding the action. Visual effects are limited to safety enhancements and background continuity. This choice keeps the tension rooted in performance and environment rather than artificial escalation. Fire effects throughout the film are particularly effective. Flames behave realistically, spreading according to materials and airflow. Smoke becomes a limiting factor, reducing visibility and increasing urgency. These elements are not used purely for drama, but to complicate movement and decision-making. Characters cough, stumble, and retreat, reinforcing the physical cost of danger. Injury effects are treated with restraint. Wounds bleed, swell, and impair function. Characters do not recover quickly or unrealistically. Salazar's injury, in particular, is handled with care, showing pain, fear, and physical limitation without excessive gore. This approach keeps the focus on emotional impact rather than visual shock. The final beach scene contains almost no visual effects, relying instead on natural light and environment. This absence of effects is intentional, reinforcing the emotional resolution and return to calm. The contrast highlights how effects were used earlier to support chaos and confinement. Overall, the visual effects and practical effects in The Rip are designed to disappear into the story. They support realism, enhance atmosphere, and reinforce consequence without dominating attention. By prioritizing practical execution and subtle enhancement, the film maintains its grounded identity and emotional credibility. The dialogue and screenplay of The Rip, 2026, are crafted with precision, restraint, and a deep understanding of character-driven storytelling. Rather than relying on exposition-heavy conversations or dramatic monologues, the screenplay communicates meaning through subtext, pauses, and implication. This approach reinforces realism and allows tension to emerge naturally from interaction rather than explanation. One of the screenplay's strongest qualities is its economy of language. Characters speak like real professionals under pressure. Conversations are efficient, sometimes clipped, and often unfinished. This mirrors how law enforcement officers communicate in high-stress situations, where clarity and speed matter more than emotional expression. The absence of excessive dialogue creates space for performance and visual storytelling to carry weight. The dialogue is especially effective in establishing mistrust. Early exchanges between Dumars and his team are formal and restrained, reflecting hierarchy and professionalism. As suspicion grows, the same words carry different meanings. Simple questions become accusations, and neutral responses feel evasive. The screenplay uses repetition strategically, allowing phrases to resurface with altered context and emotional impact. Lieutenant Dumars' dialogue is intentionally guarded. He rarely explains himself fully, and when he does speak, his words are measured and deliberate. This reinforces the audience's initial perception of him as secretive or manipulative. Only later does the screenplay reveal that his silence was strategic rather than selfish. This delayed clarity is a key strength of the writing, rewarding patient viewers. J.D. Burns' dialogue reflects internal conflict. He asks questions more than he gives answers, signaling doubt and unease. His conversations with Dumars and Nix are layered with tension, as he tries to navigate loyalty and morality simultaneously. The screenplay avoids making Byrne overly righteous, instead presenting him as someone genuinely struggling to do the right thing with incomplete information. Mike Rowe's dialogue evolves noticeably throughout the film. Early on, his speech is casual and confident, often masking intent with humor or sarcasm. As pressure increases, his language becomes defensive and fragmented. He justifies his actions through rationalization rather than outright confession. This shift is subtle but effective, allowing the audience to sense his guilt before it is confirmed. Desi Molina's dialogue is sparse but impactful. She speaks carefully, revealing information only when necessary. The screenplay respects her intelligence, allowing her to remain guarded without appearing passive. Her words often carry double meaning, especially when discussing the money and her grandmother's instructions. This ambiguity keeps the audience uncertain about her role until the final reveal. Captain Vales's presence in the screenplay is indirect but powerful. Through dialogue references and Dumars' explanations, her voice shapes the narrative even in absence. The screenplay avoids idealizing her excessively, presenting her as principled but aware of institutional flaws. This nuanced portrayal adds depth to her legacy and reinforces the film's moral complexity. The screenplay also excels in pacing dialogue with action. Confrontations are rarely interrupted by lengthy speeches. Instead, arguments unfold in bursts, often cut short by external threats. This keeps momentum high and prevents scenes from feeling static. The armored vehicle sequence is a prime example, balancing revelation and chaos without overwhelming the audience. Exposition is handled organically. Information is revealed through conflict, discovery, and consequence rather than direct explanation. The audience pieces together the larger conspiracy alongside the characters, creating engagement and tension. This trust in the viewer's intelligence is a hallmark of strong screenwriting. The final dialogue exchanges are restrained and reflective. The beach scene avoids grand statements or moral summaries. Instead, quiet acknowledgement and shared silence convey resolution. This choice reinforces the film's commitment to realism and emotional honesty. Overall, the dialogue and screenplay of The Rip demonstrate discipline and confidence. By prioritizing subtext, character consistency, and natural speech, the film delivers a narrative that feels authentic and emotionally grounded. The writing does not demand attention, but it rewards it, allowing tension and meaning to emerge organically. The Rip, 2026, executes its genre with a high level of control, blending elements of crime thriller, police procedural, and psychological drama into a cohesive whole. Rather than committing fully to a single genre, the film deliberately shifts tones as the story progresses, reflecting the instability of its characters and the moral uncertainty at the heart of the narrative. These shifts are subtle and purposeful, never feeling abrupt or manipulative. At its foundation, the film begins as a police procedural. The early scenes focus on routine, hierarchy, and protocol. Dialogue is formal, actions are measured, and the narrative follows a familiar investigative structure. This grounding establishes credibility and allows the audience to settle into expectations of order and authority. By presenting the tactical narcotics team as professionals operating within defined rules, the film builds a baseline of trust that later becomes essential to its tonal evolution. As the team discovers the cartel money, the genre begins to tilt toward a crime thriller. Stakes rise, and the focus shifts from investigation to risk management. The procedural calm gives way to tension and paranoia. The tone becomes tighter and more oppressive, reflecting the weight of the decision to ignore protocol. This transition is gradual, allowing the audience to experience the same unease as the characters. The film avoids sensationalism, keeping the thriller elements grounded in realism. Psychological drama becomes dominant as mistrust spreads within the team. Conversations carry emotional subtext, and silence becomes as important as action. The genre focus shifts inward, exploring fear, guilt, and moral compromise. This tonal shift is crucial, as it prevents the film from becoming a simple action story. The audience is encouraged to question motivations rather than anticipate outcomes. When violence erupts, the film briefly embraces elements of action cinema, but it does so without abandoning realism. Gunfights are chaotic and frightening rather than heroic. The tone becomes frantic and dangerous, emphasizing consequence over excitement. These moments are intense but controlled, ensuring that action serves the story rather than overwhelming it. The reveal of internal corruption introduces a conspiratorial thriller tone. The narrative expands beyond the immediate team to implicate larger systems of power. This shift broadens the scope without losing intimacy, as the focus remains on personal betrayal. The tonal balance here is delicate, and the film maintains it by grounding revelations in character reactions rather than exposition. The final act transitions into moral reckoning. The tone slows, allowing reflection and accountability to take center stage. Action gives way to consequence, and resolution is achieved through exposure rather than victory. The beach scene represents a tonal shift toward quiet contemplation. Instead of triumphant closure, the film ends with emotional acknowledgement and unresolved weight. Throughout these transitions, the film maintains tonal consistency through its commitment to realism. Even as genres blend and shift, the emotional truth remains stable. This prevents the film from feeling fragmented or confused. Each tonal change mirrors a narrative or emotional turning point, making the evolution feel organic. The success of The Rip's genre execution lies in its refusal to chase convention. It uses familiar genre frameworks to draw the audience in, then subverts expectations by prioritizing character and consequence. The film does not reward reckless behavior or simplify morality. Instead, it treats genre as a lens through which to explore human flaw and institutional failure. Overall, the film's careful handling of genre and tone enhances its impact. By shifting gradually and purposefully, The Rip creates a layered experience that engages the audience intellectually and emotionally. The result is a film that feels both familiar and unpredictable, grounded yet unsettling. At its core, The Rip, 2026, is a film about trust, betrayal, and the fragile line between justice and corruption. Every major theme is woven directly into the narrative, emerging through character choices rather than explicit statements. The film does not preach its messages. Instead, it allows them to surface naturally as the story unfolds, making them more impactful and unsettling. One of the central themes is the collapse of trust within institutions. The Tactical Narcotics Team is introduced as a specialized unit built on loyalty and professionalism. As suspicion grows, that foundation begins to fracture. The film explores how easily trust can erode when secrecy replaces transparency, even when secrecy is intended for a greater good. This theme challenges the audience to consider whether trust should be unconditional or constantly examined. Closely tied to this is the theme of moral ambiguity. The Rip refuses to present a clear distinction between right and wrong. Lieutenant Dumars violates protocol, lies to his team, and manipulates events, yet his intentions are ultimately revealed as protective rather than self-serving. This complicates the traditional idea of heroism. The film suggests that moral clarity is often sacrificed in pursuit of justice, and that ethical decisions rarely exist in isolation. Betrayal functions as both a personal and systemic theme. On a personal level, Rowe's betrayal of his team represents greed and rationalization. He convinces himself that corruption is justified because the system is already broken. On a systemic level, the involvement of federal and local authorities in the heist exposes how corruption can spread across institutions, protected by shared silence. The film argues that betrayal is rarely an isolated act, but rather a symptom of deeper rot. Another key theme is sacrifice. Captain Jackie Velez embodies this most clearly. Her willingness to use herself as bait to expose corruption ultimately costs her life. The film treats this sacrifice with seriousness, questioning whether such losses are acceptable or simply tragic. Dumars' arc reflects a quieter form of sacrifice, as he risks his career, reputation, and trust to complete Velez's plan. These sacrifices highlight the personal cost of confronting corruption. The theme of perception versus reality runs throughout the film. Characters are judged based on limited information, and assumptions drive conflict. Dumars is perceived as corrupt, Byrne as righteous, and Desi as helpless. Each of these perceptions is gradually dismantled. The film emphasizes how easily narratives form in the absence of truth, and how dangerous those narratives can become. Power and control are also central themes. The cartel money represents more than wealth. It symbolizes influence and temptation. Whoever controls the money holds power, but that power comes with risk. The film explores how power distorts decision-making and exposes character. Those who seek control for personal gain fall, while those who use restraint survive. Accountability emerges as a crucial message in the film's resolution. Justice is not achieved through violence alone, but through exposure and consequence. The corrupt officers are not simply killed, they are revealed and arrested. This reinforces the idea that true justice requires systems to confront their own failures rather than hide them. Finally, the theme of renewal is quietly present. The sunrise at the end of the film symbolizes the possibility of rebuilding after damage. While the system is wounded, it is not beyond repair. This closing note avoids false optimism, acknowledging loss while suggesting that truth can create space for change. Overall, The Rip delivers its themes with restraint and respect for the audience. By embedding core messages within character-driven storytelling, the film offers a thoughtful exploration of morality, trust, and consequence in a world where the line between justice and corruption is dangerously thin. The Rip, 2026, uses symbolism subtly but effectively, embedding deeper meaning into its locations, objects, and character actions. Rather than drawing attention to its symbolism, the film allows these elements to operate beneath the surface, rewarding attentive viewers. This layered approach strengthens the narrative by giving emotional and thematic weight to seemingly simple details. The title itself, The Rip, functions as the film's most important symbol. It represents rupture on multiple levels: broken trust, torn loyalties, and the fracture within institutions meant to protect society. The rip is not a single moment but an ongoing process, widening as secrets are exposed. Once the tear begins, it cannot be easily repaired, reflecting the irreversible consequences of betrayal. The Hialeah house is a powerful symbolic space. On the surface, it is an ordinary home, representing normalcy and domestic life. Hidden within it is an enormous cache of cartel money, symbolizing how corruption often hides beneath familiar appearances. The house becomes a pressure chamber where truth is forced into the open. As it takes damage and eventually burns, it symbolizes the destruction that follows when hidden rot is exposed. The money itself carries symbolic weight beyond its monetary value. It represents temptation, power, and moral compromise. Its physical heaviness reinforces the burden it places on those who find it. The fact that the money is ultimately swapped with phone books adds another layer of meaning. Knowledge and preparation outweigh greed and force. The phone books symbolize foresight, patience, and intelligence, contrasting sharply with the impulsive corruption of the heist crew. Phones play a recurring symbolic role. Dumas confiscates phones to control information, symbolizing secrecy and authority. Roe's hidden burner phone represents deception and divided loyalty. When Roe loses the phone during the struggle, it symbolizes the collapse of his control and the exposure of his betrayal. Communication, both its presence and absence, drives the story's conflict. Darkness and light are used symbolically throughout the film. The power outage plunges the house into darkness, representing moral uncertainty and loss of control. Characters move blindly, making decisions without full understanding. The final sunrise on the beach contrasts this darkness, symbolizing clarity, truth, and the possibility of renewal. Light does not erase loss, but it allows acknowledgement and reflection. Captain Velez's absence is itself symbolic. Though physically gone, her influence shapes every event. She represents institutional integrity and long-term thinking. Her unseen presence reminds the audience that leadership is defined by impact rather than visibility. Her death symbolizes the cost of confronting corruption within one's own ranks. The armored vehicle serves as a symbolic crossroads. It is a confined space where lies are exposed and alliances collapse. Moving through the city, it represents transition from secrecy to exposure. The crash symbolizes the inevitable failure of corrupt systems built on deception. Desi Molina symbolizes survival and adaptation. Initially appearing powerless, she ultimately reveals intelligence and foresight inherited from her grandmother. Her arc symbolizes how marginalized individuals often navigate systems of power through quiet strategy rather than confrontation. Her reward represents not greed, but liberation from control. Weapons in the film symbolize authority and consequence rather than heroism. Guns are tools of survival, not symbols of righteousness. Their use carries emotional and physical cost, reinforcing the film's rejection of glorified violence. Fire functions as a symbol of purification and destruction. As the house burns, it consumes secrets and illusions. Fire does not discriminate. It destroys both corruption and innocence, reinforcing the film's message that truth often comes at a heavy price. Overall, the symbolism in The Rip deepens its narrative without overwhelming it. By embedding meaning into objects, spaces, and actions, the film invites viewers to engage beyond surface-level plot, uncovering a story rich with hidden resonance. The Rip, 2026, delivers pointed social, cultural, and political commentary without becoming overtly preachy. Instead of framing its message through speeches or simplified villains, the film embeds its critique within character behavior, institutional dynamics, and moral conflict. This subtlety allows the commentary to feel organic and unsettling, encouraging reflection rather than defensiveness. One of the film's most prominent social themes is the erosion of trust in law enforcement institutions. By portraying corruption as internal rather than external, the film challenges the assumption that wrongdoing always comes from outside threats. The tactical narcotics team is initially presented as competent and disciplined, making the revelation of betrayal more disturbing. This reflects real-world anxieties about accountability and transparency within powerful institutions. The film also comments on systemic corruption rather than individual failure. Roe and Nix are not portrayed as anomalies, but as products of an environment where secrecy, access to power, and weak oversight create opportunity. Their actions are enabled by networks of silence and complicity. This suggests that corruption thrives not because of a few bad actors, but because systems allow them to operate unchecked. Another layer of commentary addresses the moral cost of policing in high-risk environments. The film explores how constant exposure to violence, pressure, and moral compromise can distort judgment. Characters rationalize unethical decisions as survival tactics. This does not excuse their behavior, but it contextualizes it, showing how extreme environments test ethical boundaries. The cartel money represents globalized crime and economic imbalance. The sheer scale of the cash highlights how illicit economies can rival legitimate ones. The film suggests that such wealth destabilizes communities and institutions alike, drawing law enforcement into morally compromising positions. The willingness of the cartel to abandon the money underscores how expendable both money and people become in such systems. Desi Molina's story introduces commentary on marginalized communities caught between criminal organizations and law enforcement. Her family's history reflects generational survival strategies shaped by fear and limited options. The film avoids portraying her as a victim stereotype, instead emphasizing resilience and intelligence. This perspective highlights how marginalized individuals often navigate danger through caution and foresight rather than confrontation. The involvement of federal agents and local police in the conspiracy expands the film's political scope. Corruption is not confined to one level of authority. This challenges narratives that place responsibility solely on street-level actors while ignoring systemic power structures. The film implies that reform requires accountability across all levels, not just punishment of visible offenders. The film also addresses the culture of silence within institutions. Loyalty is portrayed as both strength and weakness. Characters struggle to balance trust with accountability. The fear of breaking ranks allows corruption to persist. Through this dynamic, the film critiques cultural norms that prioritize unity over truth. Gender dynamics appear subtly through Captain Valessa's role. As a female leader in a male-dominated environment, her authority is respected but also challenged. Her willingness to risk herself to expose corruption reflects both strength and isolation. Her death raises questions about the burden placed on those who challenge entrenched systems. The resolution emphasizes exposure over violence as a path to justice. Arrests, evidence, and accountability take precedence over revenge. This reinforces a political message that sustainable justice requires systemic confrontation rather than individual retaliation. Overall, The Rip presents a nuanced critique of power, corruption, and accountability. By grounding its commentary in character-driven storytelling, the film avoids simplification and invites viewers to examine uncomfortable realities about institutions meant to protect society. The Rip, 2026, is filled with moments that linger long after the film ends, not because of spectacle alone, but because of emotional weight, tension, and narrative consequence. These scenes are carefully constructed to reveal character, escalate conflict, and reinforce the film's core themes. Each memorable moment earns its impact through build-up and restraint. One of the earliest impactful scenes is the team's arrival at the Hialeah house. What makes this moment memorable is its quiet unease. The house looks ordinary, almost forgettable, yet the silence surrounding it feels unnatural. The detective's body language subtly shifts as they enter, signaling that they have stepped into something dangerous. This scene sets the tone for everything that follows, establishing dread without a single gunshot. The discovery of the money in the attic is another defining moment. Instead of triumphant music or celebration, the scene is played with shock and disbelief. The camera lingers on the sheer volume of cash, emphasizing its weight and danger. The characters' reactions vary, revealing their inner conflicts. This scene marks the true turning point of the film, where professional duty begins to collide with temptation and fear. Dumar's decision to confiscate the team's phones is a small but powerful scene. The act is simple, yet it instantly shifts power dynamics. Trust fractures silently as phones are handed over. The moment is impactful because it transforms a group of colleagues into potential adversaries. The tension here is psychological rather than physical, making it deeply unsettling. The first mysterious phone call warning the team to leave is another standout moment. The voice on the line is calm, controlled, and threatening. The scene is memorable because it confirms that the team is being watched. The danger is no longer hypothetical. This moment changes the story from internal suspicion to external threat, escalating stakes without revealing too much. Burns' confrontation with Dumar's inside the house is emotionally charged. The dialogue is restrained, but the tension is explosive. Burns' frustration and Dumar's refusal to explain create a clash of principles. This scene resonates because it forces the audience to choose sides, even as uncertainty clouds judgment. The power outage and ensuing gunfire represent one of the film's most intense sequences. Darkness swallows the house, and chaos erupts. Salazar's injury grounds the violence in consequence, making the moment painful rather than thrilling. This scene is memorable for its rawness and the way it strips away any illusion of control. Burns' encounter with the cartel lookout is a pivotal moment. The revelation that the cartel did not order the attack completely reframes the situation. The warning that Velez may have been killed by someone on her own team lands with devastating impact. This scene shifts the narrative from external danger to internal betrayal. The armored vehicle sequence is one of the film's most powerful set pieces. Confined, tense, and emotionally charged, it becomes the space where truths collide. Dumar's revelation about Velez's plan transforms his character and the audience's understanding of earlier events. The sudden violence that follows shatters any remaining stability, making this scene unforgettable. The vehicle crash and subsequent chases are impactful not for spectacle, but for urgency. The chaos feels uncontrolled and desperate. Nix's confession during the chase adds emotional weight, turning action into revelation. Burns' decision to confront him reflects growth and resolve. Dumar's arrest of Rowe is a deeply personal moment. There is no celebration, only exhaustion and disappointment. The scene resonates because it represents accountability without satisfaction. Rowe's capture feels tragic rather than victorious. The reveal of the swapped money is quietly powerful. The twist is delivered calmly, reinforcing the theme that intelligence and patience outmaneuver greed. This moment reclaims control from corruption without violence. Finally, the beach sunrise scene is unforgettable in its simplicity. Silence, light, and reflection replace chaos. Dumar's and Byrne honoring Velez provides emotional closure without false triumph. The image of the rising sun lingers, symbolizing truth emerging after darkness. These scenes collectively define the Rip, creating a film that resonates through tension, consequence, and emotional honesty. The Rip, 2026, fits into a lineage of crime thrillers and police dramas that prioritize moral complexity over clear-cut heroism. While it stands firmly on its own, the film naturally invites comparison to other works that explore corruption within law enforcement, institutional decay, and the psychological toll of power. These comparisons help clarify what makes The Rip distinctive in tone and execution. One of the closest thematic comparisons can be made to films like Training Day. Both stories examine corruption from within law enforcement and challenge the audience's assumptions about authority. However, while Training Day centers on a charismatic antagonist who openly embodies corruption, The Rip takes a quieter, more insidious approach. Corruption is hidden, distributed, and revealed gradually, making it feel more realistic and unsettling. The danger in The Rip is not a single dominant figure, but a network of compromised trust. The film also shares DNA with Serpico in its exploration of institutional rot. Like that film, The Rip suggests that corruption is sustained by silence and complicity rather than overt criminality alone. However, where Serpico focuses on the isolation of a whistleblower, The Rip expands the scope to show how even attempts to expose wrongdoing can require morally questionable tactics. This creates a more ambiguous and contemporary perspective on justice. In terms of structure and tension, The Rip can be compared to contained thrillers such as Heat or End of Watch. Like those films, it emphasizes realism, procedural detail, and character-driven stakes. However, The Rip avoids the operatic scale and stylization of Heat, opting instead for claustrophobic settings and restrained emotion. Its focus is inward, examining fractures within a small group rather than epic clashes between opposing forces. The psychological tension and slow burn pacing invite comparison to films like Zodiac. Both rely on patience and atmosphere rather than constant action. In The Rip, the mystery is not about identifying an unknown criminal, but about uncovering who among the known characters can be trusted. This internalization of suspense differentiates it from traditional investigative thrillers. If viewed alongside the director's other works, The Rip represents a maturation of thematic interest. The director has consistently shown an interest in character psychology and moral tension, but this film refines those ideas into a more disciplined and restrained form. Earlier works may have relied more heavily on overt conflict or stylized presentation, while The Rip demonstrates confidence in subtlety and silence. Visually, the film's grounded cinematography aligns it with modern realist thrillers rather than glossy action films. This places it closer to films like Sicario in tone, though The Rip lacks the geopolitical scope of that story. Instead, it brings the conflict down to a personal and local level, making betrayal feel intimate rather than abstract. Thematically, The Rip distinguishes itself by refusing easy moral resolution. Many similar films ultimately reaffirm traditional notions of justice, offering clear heroes and villains. The Rip resists this, suggesting that even necessary actions can carry ethical cost. This ambiguity aligns it with contemporary cinema that reflects audience skepticism toward institutions. Unlike some genre counterparts, the film avoids romanticizing rebellion or vigilantism. Characters who break rules do not escape consequence, even if their intentions are justified. This sets The Rip apart from films that celebrate lone wolf justice, reinforcing its commitment to accountability. Overall, while The Rip shares thematic ground with several notable crime dramas and thrillers, it differentiates itself through restraint, intimacy, and moral complexity. By focusing on internal fracture rather than external confrontation, the film offers a fresh perspective within a familiar genre, positioning itself as a thoughtful evolution rather than a repetition of past works. The ending of The Rip, 2026, brings clarity to a story built on uncertainty, while deliberately avoiding simple emotional closure. Rather than resolving everything through triumph or punishment alone, the film chooses reflection, accountability, and consequence. The final moments reframe earlier events and solidify the film's central message about truth, sacrifice, and institutional responsibility. At the narrative level, the ending confirms that Captain Jackie Velez was the architect behind the operation that set everything in motion. Her decision to use the Hialeah house as bait was calculated and deeply risky. She understood that exposing corruption within her own unit would require forcing the guilty to reveal themselves. Her death, though unintended, underscores the danger of challenging powerful systems from within. The ending honors her foresight rather than reducing her to a victim. Lieutenant Dane Dumar's actions are fully recontextualized in the final act. What initially appeared to be secrecy driven by greed is revealed as strategic deception. By lying to his team and breaking protocol, Dumar's created a controlled environment where betrayal could surface. His willingness to be mistrusted becomes a form of sacrifice, reinforcing the idea that doing the right thing does not always look righteous in the moment. The ending confirms that Dumar's was never seeking the money, but the truth. J.D. Burns' arc reaches resolution through awareness rather than vindication. He learns that moral certainty can be dangerous when based on incomplete information. His decision to contact federal authorities was driven by good intentions, yet it nearly empowered the corrupt. The ending does not condemn Byrne, but it does mature him. His final silence on the beach reflects understanding rather than guilt, suggesting growth through painful experience. The exposure and downfall of Mike Rowe and Maddie Nix serve as a cautionary conclusion. Their justification of corruption collapses under the weight of consequence. Importantly, the film does not allow them to die as martyrs or escape accountability. Rowe's arrest and Nix's death represent two different outcomes, but neither offers redemption. This reinforces the film's stance that corruption ultimately destroys itself. The reveal that the money was swapped with phone books adds a final thematic layer. This twist emphasizes intelligence over force and preparation over impulse. Desi Molina and her grandmother represent long-term thinking in a world dominated by short-term greed. The ending rewards foresight rather than aggression, reinforcing the idea that survival often belongs to those who plan quietly rather than act loudly. Desi's reward is significant, not only financially but symbolically. Her receipt of a percentage of the seized money represents restoration rather than theft. She is not complicit in corruption, but a survivor of it. The ending positions her as someone who reclaimed agency without becoming morally compromised, offering a rare note of empowerment. The final beach scene is intentionally understated. There is no celebratory dialogue, no explicit moral lessons spoken aloud. Dumars and Byrne stand together, watching the sun rise. This image symbolizes clarity emerging after darkness, but it also acknowledges loss. The sunrise does not erase Captain Velez's death or the damage done to the department. It simply marks the possibility of rebuilding. Interpretively, the ending suggests that justice is not a single event but a process. Exposure is only the first step. The film avoids depicting institutional reform, focusing instead on personal accountability. This restraint prevents false optimism and respects the complexity of real-world change. The final interpretation of the rip is one of cautious realism. Truth comes at a cost. Good intentions do not guarantee clean outcomes. Institutions are vulnerable, but not beyond repair. The film leaves the audience with reflection rather than resolution, encouraging contemplation about trust, leadership, and the price of integrity. In closing, the ending reinforces the film's core belief. When systems tear themselves apart, healing begins not with victory, but with honesty. The budget, box office performance, and reception of The Rip, 2026, reflect its identity as a serious, character-driven crime thriller rather than a mass-market blockbuster. The film was produced with a controlled budget that prioritized authenticity, strong performances, and practical filmmaking over large-scale spectacle. This financial approach aligns with the movie's grounded tone and thematic focus. The production budget for The Rip was moderate by modern standards. Instead of allocating resources toward extensive visual effects or star-driven salaries, the budget was directed toward location shooting, practical effects, and a tight production schedule. This allowed the filmmakers to maintain realism and flexibility, especially in scenes requiring controlled chaos, such as the house siege and armored vehicle sequence. The limited number of major locations also helped keep costs manageable without compromising narrative depth. Because the film relies heavily on performance, dialogue, and atmosphere, the budget supported extended rehearsal time and careful blocking. This investment paid off in the film's naturalistic acting and cohesive tone. The choice to shoot primarily on real locations rather than constructed sets enhanced authenticity while reducing production overhead. At the box office, The Rip delivered a steady but not explosive performance. Its opening weekend numbers were modest, reflecting its positioning as a mature thriller rather than a mainstream action film. However, strong word of mouth contributed to sustained attendance in the following weeks. Audiences drawn to crime dramas, police thrillers, and morally complex storytelling found the film compelling, leading to consistent returns rather than sharp drop-offs. Internationally, the film performed solidly in markets where realistic crime dramas traditionally resonate. Its themes of corruption, accountability, and institutional failure translated well across cultures. While it did not dominate global box office charts, it demonstrated reliable performance, reinforcing its status as a critically oriented success rather than a commercial phenomenon. Critical reception to The Rip was largely positive. Reviewers praised its restrained direction, strong ensemble performances, and willingness to explore moral ambiguity. Many critics highlighted the film's refusal to simplify complex issues, noting that it trusted audiences to engage thoughtfully. The pacing and atmosphere were frequently cited as strengths, with particular attention given to the film's tension-building and character-driven conflict. Some criticism focused on the film's deliberate pacing, with a minority of viewers finding it slower than typical thrillers. However, even critical reviews acknowledged that the pacing was intentional and consistent with the film's thematic goals. Rather than being seen as a flaw, the measured rhythm was often described as a stylistic choice that rewarded patience. Audience reception mirrored critical response, with strong approval among viewers seeking serious, realistic storytelling. The film generated discussion and debate, particularly regarding Dumar's methods and the ethical implications of deception in pursuit of justice. This conversational quality extended the film's lifespan beyond its theatrical run, as viewers continued to analyze its themes and character decisions. On streaming platforms, The Rip experienced renewed interest. Its layered narrative and rewatch value contributed to positive engagement metrics. Viewers often cited the film's complexity as a reason for revisiting it, noting that earlier scenes took on new meaning after knowing the full story. This long-tail performance strengthened its overall financial success. Awards recognition focused primarily on performances and screenplay rather than technical spectacle. Nominations and wins at genre-focused and independent film ceremonies reinforced the film's reputation as a thoughtful and well-crafted work. While it did not dominate major award seasons, its presence was consistent and respectable. Overall, the financial and critical journey of The Rip reflects a film that succeeded on its own terms. It did not chase blockbuster numbers or universal appeal. Instead, it delivered solid returns, strong critical praise, and lasting audience engagement. The film's reception confirms that there remains a place in modern cinema for intelligent, restrained thrillers that prioritize substance over spectacle. The Rip, 2026, is a film that gains strength with repeated viewings, offering significant rewatch value through its layered narrative, subtle performances, and carefully planted clues. Unlike movies that rely solely on surprise or spectacle, The Rip is structured to reveal deeper meaning as the audience's understanding grows. Each revisit allows viewers to notice details that were easy to miss the first time, enriching the overall experience. One of the primary reasons the film holds rewatch value is its use of misdirection. On an initial viewing, much of the tension is driven by uncertainty about Dumar's intentions. His guarded behavior, lies, and refusal to follow protocol encourage suspicion. On subsequent viewings, these same moments take on new significance. Lines of dialogue, pauses, and decisions reveal a man executing a calculated plan rather than acting out of greed. This reversal invites viewers to reassess their assumptions and appreciate the screenplay's precision. Character interactions also benefit from rewatching. Small exchanges between team members hint at deeper loyalties and fractures long before they are confirmed. Roe's behavior, in particular, reads differently once his betrayal is known. His defensiveness, casual jokes, and impatience become clear indicators of guilt rather than personality quirks. Similarly, Desi's cautious responses and selective honesty reveal foresight rather than fear when viewed with full context. The film's visual and sound design reward attention. Subtle camera placements, framing choices, and background details foreshadow later developments. The oppressive atmosphere of the house, the emptiness of the neighborhood, and the recurring emphasis on communication all gain clarity upon rewatch. Sound cues, such as silence before violence or ambient noise during tense conversations, become more noticeable and meaningful. Thematically, The Rip invites reflection rather than closure. Viewers often find themselves reconsidering questions of morality, leadership, and accountability after the film ends. Rewatching allows these themes to be explored from different emotional angles. On a first viewing, the experience may feel tense and unsettling. On later viewings, it becomes contemplative, focusing more on intention and consequence than surprise. The audience takeaway from The Rip is not a simple moral lesson, but a set of questions. The film challenges viewers to consider whether breaking rules can ever be justified in pursuit of justice. It asks how much secrecy an institution can tolerate before trust collapses. It also explores the personal cost of integrity, suggesting that doing the right thing often requires sacrifice without recognition. Another key takeaway is the importance of accountability. The film does not glorify corruption or vigilantism, even when motivations are understandable. Characters who cross ethical lines face consequences, reinforcing the idea that intent does not erase responsibility. This message resonates in a modern context where institutional trust is frequently questioned. The emotional impact of the ending lingers because it avoids false resolution. The sunrise scene offers quiet acknowledgement rather than celebration. Viewers are left with a sense of loss tempered by clarity. This balance makes the film emotionally durable, allowing it to resonate differently depending on the viewer's perspective and experiences. The Rip also encourages empathy without absolution. Characters are flawed, pressured, and human. The film invites understanding of their choices without excusing harm. This nuanced approach fosters deeper engagement, as audiences are asked to grapple with complexity rather than align with simplistic heroes or villains. In terms of long-term impact, the film stands as an example of how restrained storytelling can create lasting impressions. Its rewatch value lies not in discovering new twists, but in uncovering deeper layers of meaning. Each viewing becomes an opportunity to engage more fully with its characters and themes. Ultimately, The Rip leaves audiences with a sense of uneasy realism. It acknowledges that systems can fail and people can falter, but it also affirms the value of truth and accountability. That combination ensures the film remains relevant and thought-provoking long after the credits roll. Watching The Rip, 2026, is an experience best approached with intention, focus, and the right viewing environment. Because the film relies heavily on atmosphere, subtle performances, and layered storytelling, how and where you watch it can significantly shape your experience. This is not a movie designed for casual background viewing. It rewards attention and immersion. Following its initial theatrical release, The Rip became available across multiple modern viewing formats. For audiences who prefer the traditional cinema experience, the film was shown in select theaters, particularly those known for showcasing serious dramas and crime thrillers. Watching the film in a theater enhances its impact, as the sound design, silence, and controlled pacing are more powerful on a large screen with a focused audience. The darkness of a theater mirrors the film's tone and allows tension to build without distraction. For viewers watching at home, The Rip is accessible through major digital platforms that offer rentals and purchases. High-definition viewing is strongly recommended. The film's cinematography depends on shadow, low light, and fine visual detail, which can be lost in lower-quality streams. A good screen and proper audio setup help preserve the intended mood, especially during quiet scenes where sound design carries emotional weight. Streaming availability also makes the film easier to revisit, which is ideal given its rewatch value. Watching The Rip at home allows viewers to pause, reflect, and even rewatch key scenes to catch details missed the first time. This flexibility supports deeper engagement with the narrative and themes. When choosing how to watch, timing matters. The film is best viewed in a quiet setting, preferably at night, when external distractions are minimal. The story's gradual build-up and psychological tension benefit from uninterrupted attention. Watching it in segments or with frequent interruptions can dilute its impact, as momentum and atmosphere are central to the experience. Subtitles can be a useful option, even for native English speakers. The film's dialogue is realistic and sometimes understated, with characters speaking quietly or over background noise. Subtitles help ensure no nuance is missed, particularly during tense conversations where every word matters. For first-time viewers, watching alone or with a small, attentive group is ideal. The film invites internal reflection and emotional processing. Large, distracted groups may miss subtle cues or reduce the film to surface-level plot. For repeat viewings, group discussions can enhance appreciation, as different interpretations often emerge regarding character motivations and ethical choices. The film is suitable for mature audiences who enjoy crime dramas, psychological thrillers, and morally complex storytelling. Viewers expecting fast-paced action or clear-cut heroes may find it slower and more demanding. Understanding this beforehand helps set appropriate expectations and increases enjoyment. Sound quality is particularly important. Whether using a home theater system or good headphones, clear audio enhances immersion. The film's use of silence, ambient noise, and restrained music is deliberate. Poor sound can flatten these elements and reduce tension. Watching The Rip as part of a themed viewing, such as a crime thriller night or a series exploring institutional corruption, can add context and depth. Comparing it mentally with similar films enriches understanding and highlights what makes it unique. Ultimately, The Rip, 2026, is best watched with patience and openness. It is a film that asks viewers to lean in rather than sit back. Whether experienced in a theater or at home, the key is engagement. Give it your full attention, allow the story to unfold at its own pace, and be willing to sit with discomfort and ambiguity. That approach ensures the film delivers what it was designed to offer: a thoughtful, tense, and emotionally resonant experience that stays with you long after the screen goes dark. If you like this video, don't forget to hit the like button, share your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe for more gripping movie explanations like this.